To review, God has been accused by Satan of being arbitrary and restrictive in his dealings with creation. In a malicious effort to undermine God's law, Satan offers an amendment which he claims allows creation to write their own laws to supposedly give creation more freedom. Namely, Satan creates transposable elements to change his genome at will. However, God claims that his laws are the best for creation and that his laws are immutable. But most importantly, God claims that the natural consequences of sin, or transgression of the law, is death. God needs to show creation the ultimate results of sin, which will also unveil the true character behind Satan's motives. In addition, he needs to provide a cure for the sin problem, but he needs to do it without changing the law, given that Satan's argument specifically targets God's law as being defective. Basically, God has to get rid of transposable elements using no other means besides what was originally in Adam's genome. Which also means that God had to design countermeasures into the original design in the event that someone tried to change the genome. So now let's shift our focus to how transposable elements are dealt with from a scientific point of view. The genome is a vast, extraordinarily complicated information system. In order to fit all the genetic information into a cell, DNA has to be folded and coiled into increasingly larger superstructures. DNA is wound around histones, which act kind of like a cassette storing the DNA. Loosely packed histones form euchromatin, which allows the cell's machinery access to the DNA for transcription. However, histones can be methylated, which coils the histones together, forming heterochromatin. This densely packed form makes the packed DNA physically inaccessible, effectively silencing large portions of the genome. Furthermore, the DNA strand itself can be methylated at specific sites to repress individual genes. Both heterochromatin and DNA methylation are used by the genome to silence transposable elements. What does the Bible say? Job 14:17. My transgression is sealed up in a bag, and you cover my iniquity. This sounds awfully similar to heterochromatin. So, how does heterochromatin form? Heterochromatin is formed through a diverse family of molecular complexes called RISC, or RNA-induced silencing complexes. RISCs can target virtually any nucleotide sequence for silencing at virtually any level. RISCs can repress translation at the protein level, at the transcript level by degrading mRNA, and at the genome level by forming heterochromatin. Two defining aspects common to RISCs are an Argonaute family protein and a small RNA which guides RISC to a target sequence. Argonaute proteins bind with small RNAs and locate the target site to either cleave the target directly or recruit other gene silencing proteins at the target site. Three classes of small RNAs are found in animals: microRNAs, small interfering RNAs, and Peewee RNAs. Peewee RNAs are highly expressed in germline cells, while microRNAs and small interfering RNAs are expressed in somatic or body cells. MicroRNAs and small interfering RNAs are very similar in function. They differ in that small interfering RNAs are very specific, cleaving one exact mRNA match, while microRNAs are inexact. One microRNA may target multiple mRNAs, sometimes hundreds of mRNAs. Basically, microRNAs are perfectly positioned to control all gene expression. Why is this important? Because I think microRNAs are one aspect where Jesus could provide salvation and cleansing of transposable elements. The Bible gives us some hints. Isaiah 53 verse 5. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Isaiah 53 verse 11 to 12. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Hebrews 2:10. For it was fitting for him, for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. Hebrews 5 verse 7 to 9. Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his godly fear, though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him. As it turns out, stress can change heterochromatin and DNA methylation. Jesus was subjected to intense temptations by the devil throughout life, significantly worse temptations than you or I could be subjected to. I hypothesize that Satan tried every mechanism possible, any transposable element generated circuitry, to get Jesus to sin. Yet not even by a single thought would Jesus yield to temptation. Thus, Jesus was able to create every possible beneficial variety of microRNAs, resulting in a solution to wash away all sin, all transposable elements. Remember Hebrews 5:9. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him. But why did Jesus have to die? Jesus was able to silence enough transposons so that no brain circuitry responded to any temptation from Satan. John 14:30, I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of the world is coming, and he has nothing in me. But the transposable elements are still there in his body, and some are still being actively transcribed. It was recently discovered that gene transcription does not immediately stop even after death. In fact, it takes 24 to 48 hours after death for transcription to halt. After death, many sections of the genome that were locked away in heterochromatin become active. Stress response, inflammation response, and ion and protein transport genes were observed to increase after death. Most importantly, developmental control genes, which are only expressed from a very early embryo stage to adulthood, are expressed after death. I hypothesize that Jesus had to die to prove that his solution to remove all transposable elements worked with these locked away genes. Furthermore, Jesus had to completely remove the transposable elements, not just silence them. Hebrews 9:26. He then would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world, but now, once at the end of the ages, he has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. Romans 6, verse 4-6. Therefore, we were buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in the newness of life. For if we have been united together in the likeness of his death, certainly we will also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man was crucified with him, that the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves of sin. Hebrews 1:3. Who, being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high. Hebrews 10:10. But that we will have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. I have no idea how he got rid of transposable elements, but death was required to do so. What's most important about Jesus' death, though, is that it showed to the onlooking universe the final results of sin unhindered. Jesus died the death of the sinner separated from God. Jesus was born of sinful flesh with a genome filled with transposable elements, yet not once yielded to sin. He kept God's law completely and was not deserving of death. Yet the transposable elements in him still killed him. Romans 6:23, sin paid its wage, death. Jesus' death unveiled the true character of Satan and the actual nature behind his rebellion. God did not kill Jesus. Sin, transposable elements, killed Jesus. Satan is the killer, not God.